All right, Avalanche fans, welcome to the Locked On Avalanche podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Chris Micieli, with another episode of the podcast dedicated to your Colorado Avalanche. And today we will basically talk about how things are not going as planned for Colorado. And after a good 2-game sweep of Arizona, it's kind of back to the issues at hand and getting blown out by the San Jose Sharks. So we'll take a look at many different things. Is it panic mode time? Is it all doom and gloom from here on out? We're a third of the way through the season. So do we hit that panic button, or is it time to just still have patience? And I know that might be difficult for this type of season. So we'll get into all of that stuff. But first things first, follow the show on social media outlets. Twitter, LOPN_Avalanche. On Instagram, Locked On Avalanche. And send any questions, comments, concerns, opinions. I'm getting them from people to lockedonavalanche@gmail.com. It's interesting how I get them more when they lose than when they win. When they win, everybody kind of like stays silent. But when they lose, I get it. People are frustrated and they want to air those frustrations out in email form. Totally fine. So if you feel the need to do that, then definitely send one along to lockedonavalanche@gmail.com. All right. So where do we start with what's been going on recently? And in particular, the game against San Jose when they lost 6-2. First of all, first period, while it might have been a sloppy period, the Avalanche looked good in spots and good enough to where you were thinking they have this game in hand. Even when they were up 2-0, you felt really, really good just because they are the better team. They are the more talented team. And then things just got off the rails quick. The same thing happened against Minnesota. You know, you're in that game. That game you were down, but you got back to 3-2. You're still in it. But when the wheels fell off in a big way. And the same thing happened. This time you were up. And that's maybe a little bit of the more concerning thing, that you were up 2-0 and up 2-0 against a team that when you are up, you should be putting your foot on their throat and just ending it. And that's what the Avalanche lack right now, is that headhunting ability to say, we are up in this game and you are not coming back. So why is that? So number one, obviously it's defensive, and not just the defensive units, defense from top to bottom. And sure, it doesn't help that Cale Makar is out, and it didn't help that Bowen Byram minutes before the game was pulled. And we don't know why, but we do know that Makar is not going to be there for the next San Jose game. Byram, I don't think, is going to be either. So you have to go without those two guys. But at this stage in the game, with all of the Avalanche injuries, this is something that they should get used to. You should just be used to the fact that the Avalanche are going to have injuries and they're going to need guys to step up and play. Now, some people want to hit the panic button right now, and I get that. And some people want to say, like, well, a lot of it is in regards to the injuries. And when the Avs constantly have injuries, if they would go a length of time and not have injuries, and, you know, every once in a while someone goes down for a couple games, but when you have this revolving door of injuries, people are like, they'll never be back to normal. And in that aspect, I get it, why people want to hit the panic button, because you feel like you're going to be playing this season without a 100% full, healthy roster. And on the other hand, you have to think to yourself, well, the Avalanche should be used to that. They did that last year, and they performed pretty well. But despite that, I am not hitting this proverbial panic button just yet. Concern button? Okay, sure. The big thing to remember here is the teams that start hot to start a season, they can ride that in terms of the fan base. being okay with how they play. And if they dip here and there, the fan base can always hang their hat on, well, we started the season hot, so we can always go back to that. We can always, we feel like we can always turn it around if a team is going through a stretch where they're not doing so well. But you can always say, like, well, look how we started the season. And right now the Avalanche don't have that moment or moments where the fan base can hang their hat and say, we've played good. We've seen what this team can do. You get it in moments. You get it in games. You get it in periods. You get it in shifts. You get it here and there. Every team gets that. But you don't get that run. Maybe you had it before the Avalanche were forced to pause for their COVID break. That was really out of their control. That was all Minnesota. We felt like they were heading in that direction. And that's over with now. That's over with. So what do? You have to look at how, honestly, and this is not something that people want to hear, you have to look at how a team finishes. This is a full season. Okay. This is something that, the Avalanche, I fully believe that they can turn their recent play around. I think a lot of people feel that way. But how they play at the end of the season going into the playoffs, now if they can make that, which I still think they will, you want to look at that. You want to look at how is this team playing in the final weeks of the season heading into the playoffs. Because then it doesn't matter if you're number 1 or number 4. If you're number 4 and you're playing better going into the playoffs as that number 1 team is, bring it on. I'll be more than ready to take on that team. But the concerning part is last year when they were going through all of the injuries and having the next man up mentality and it working pretty well for the most part. This year, the next man up mentality isn't really working that well. It's not working as well as it did last year. And you can see it in the coaches and how they're coaching. And we knew going into the first game against San Jose, when Byram was pulled, 20 minutes before the game, we kept hearing Taves and Girard are going to be playing a lot of minutes tonight, probably close to 30 minutes in that game. And they did. Neither one of them hit 30, but they were close. My question is, why? Is that really benefiting them? Is it surprising that the San Jose Sharks scored 4 in the third? And when you have a team that on the defensive end, their defensive players are playing as many minutes as they are. You have Jacob McDonald, who is capable. I feel like he is capable of taking on a little bit more of a role. And he got more minutes. I mean, I think he got in the 14, 15 minutes, but give him close to 20. And then you can remove some of those minutes from Girard and Taves. So why do we have the mentality of we are a deep team, but we're not utilizing them like a deep team? We're throwing them out there for every other shift or every third shift for 30 seconds and then they're out. I just feel like you have to keep your game plan no matter who's out on the ice. Of course, you're going to have to tweak a little bit if a guy like Cale Makar's not on the ice. That I get in terms of somebody else is going to have to run the point in a power play. That you can't get around. But in terms of minutes, like I just feel like they're these guys that they are bringing up to replace the normal starters, they don't have faith in. And some of it is warranted. Connor Timmins continues to struggle. He did get a little bit more minutes in the first game against San Jose, but these guys aren't taking the place of someone like Cale Makar. We're not expecting them to do Cale Makar things, and we're not expecting them to do Bowen Byram things. We're expecting them to hold their own. And they're not doing that, and the coaching staff doesn't seem like they have confidence in these guys where they did last year. They had a lot of confidence in these guys to replace the guys who were injured, and things were fine. So I don't know. You're going to be dealing with injuries, so you better get used to playing these guys and having some confidence in them. And the coaching staff doesn't seem to, and the players themselves don't really seem like they have confidence in themselves. The guys that are replacing, like the Connor Timmons of the world, that are replacing like the Cale Makars. So that's where we stand in terms of the roster. Is this Avalanche team still a top 4 team? I will get into that right after we hear from our friends over at Built Bar. And Built Bar, we talk about it all the time. It is the best tasting protein bar ever. 18 amazing flavors that you can constantly choose from. And then check their website because they're constantly adding flavors. Not daily, but it seems like daily. Some of the flavors you can choose from: caramel brownie, cookies and cream, lemon almond cheesecake, apple almond crisp, German chocolate, peanut butter. It's an extensive list, and every one of them are covered in 100% chocolate. They're soft and they're easy to chew. They are great for the health-conscious guy. You can lose or maintain weight or while indulging in a delicious treat. Bars are low calorie, low sugar, high protein, high fiber, and great for the keto diet. Most bars contain 19 grams of protein, 180 or 130 calories, 5 grams of sugar, 5 grams of net carbs. Some bars even have 4 grams of sugar and 4 grams of net carbs. They are insanely healthy. They are insanely delicious, and they are extremely good for you. So go to builtbar.com right now, and the promo code has changed. It used to just be locked on. It is now locked on and the number 20. So locked on 20, and that will get you 20% off of your next order. Once again, that promo code locked on 20 for 20% off your next order at built.com. All right. So we had said a lot about this division before the season started and how it was top heavy with Vegas, St. Louis, and Colorado. And then everybody would be fighting for that 4th spot. People want to really say, oh, are the Avalanche even going to be fighting for that 4th spot? Are they going to miss the playoffs? Hey, anything is possible. I am nowhere near going to that level. We still have a long way to go in the season. Not as long as your normal season. I understand that. But this is still, you still have 2 months. You have 2 months to go. And this isn't your typical 2 months where you're playing a couple games a week. You're playing minimally every other day. Now, that could be a problem because that's a lot of hockey to play in a short amount of time. And will that have some repercussions on anybody, testing their stamina, testing the goalies, testing Grubauer, and the backup situation, I still think needs to be addressed in maybe some sort of trade. But it also gives you a lot of games to make up ground. And the way that, and again, that is something else that can go one way or another as well, because you're playing this baseball schedule, the style of schedule, and you're not going to get many sweeps. You're going to, in a 2-game series, you're going to split a lot of those series. In a 3-game series, you're not going to sweep most of those. You'll win 2, maybe you'll win 1. So it might be tough to build ground on the teams that are above you when you play them. A team like Vegas, you're not going to have another 4-game series against Vegas, but you still have 4 games to go against them. It sucks to say it. You got to win all of them. You got to win at least 3. You've put yourself in that hole where you have to, when you play those teams ahead of you, beat them. You can't split anymore. You can't, like I said, they still have a handful of games against Vegas, but not all at once like they just did. So they're playing, I think it's 2-2. I believe it's got to be 2-2. I don't think they're playing a single game against them. So you can't split both of those series. You have to sweep one and then maybe split another one to be satisfied if things continue to go the way they go. And then when Vegas plays somebody else, hope that a team below you, like the Kings right now, can take care. You need help. And that's not what you want in any season is, you have to take care of your own house and then have your neighbor help you out. You can't have that. But having said all of that, you don't want to fall into the fourth spot. If you are battling just as much as all the other teams and you're battling to get that fourth spot, okay, so be it. And we're playing well, but we've won all these games to get into a fourth spot, and I'll see you in the playoffs. But if it's one of those things where all of the teams that are vying for that fourth spot seem like they don't want it because they keep losing, and that's where the Avalanche are at the end of the season, that's what you don't want, because now you're falling into the playoffs, not playing particularly well, falling into that last spot, and you don't have a lot of confidence going up against whoever the number one team is. So that's what you don't want. You have to look at where the Avalanche are at the end of the season come playoffs and how they go into the playoffs. And you can even say that, maybe say for the first spot, but you can say that about all the other spots in the playoffs. How did you get that spot? How did you get even number 3? How did you get the third spot? Were you battling for it and you had a good last 2-3 weeks of the season to battle and you're winning a lot of games, you're getting a lot of points to get that third spot or even that fourth spot? And good. That's what you want. But again, if you're even number 1, say you're number 1 and you struggle the last 3 weeks or 2 weeks of the season and you lose a lot of games, maybe you lose a lot in overtime, and then you fall to number 2 or even number 3, that might look good that you're the number 2 seed, but how are you playing when that number 2 seed is playing in the playoffs? That's not what you want. Are the Avs still a top 4 team in this division? Yes. Are they playing like it right now? No, they're not. Do we think that they're going to fall out of a playoff spot? No, we don't. I don't. I think this team is too talented. I think this team might be weird to say it, needs to go through something like this. They need to go through something like what they're going through right now so they can wake up and say, hey, remember when we were the favorites? That's long gone. Nobody's thinking of us like that anymore. That's a good thing. That is a good thing. Because now you can focus on what makes you a good team and not have to worry about the outside noise. And I'm not saying that they did that, but there's a lot of pressure on a team when they are going into a season having not won anything, and all of that weight of you guys are the favorite, have at it. That's for a young team too. That's a lot, especially going into a season like this. And even despite that, normal 82 game seasons, there's peaks and valleys. And I said this the other day, but just when the valleys happen in a season like this, they're just going to get amplified more. And that's just the reality of the situation. So, but are the Avalanche a playoff team? Yeah, we know that they are. The problem is they're just not playing like it. Can they? Definitely. And the good thing is they have games all the time over the next 2 months to prove themselves. So we need to, I hate saying we need to give them time. There's been enough time out there. We're over a month and a half into the season. A third of the season's already gone. It's time to show who you are. And how do the Avalanche do that? What do they have to do differently? It's very, very simple. And we'll talk about that right after we hear from betonline.ag. It's the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your sports action. We don't have football anymore, but there's a plethora of other sports that are always going on. NBA, college basketball, NHL. I'm sure there's soccer being played somewhere. It seems like that season never ends. Even NASCAR, if you want to do NASCAR. BetOnline, they even cover award shows and TV shows and reality TV, real-time updated odds and prop bets on almost anything that you can imagine. BetOnline has you covered for all the news, scores, and odds. It's the best way to place your bet, and it is completely free to sign up. So head over to the website, or you can even use your mobile device to sign up and receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit when you use the promo code Locked On. So betonline.ag, your online sportsbook experts. All right. What do the Avs need to do? What are they doing now? They're thinking too much. Now this is getting into their head. And you don't want that as an athlete of how are we going to go out and perform tonight? I hope we perform well. You don't want that. You want to go out with the mentality of, I know how we're going to perform, and I know that the team that we're playing needs to be on their best game to beat us. And the Avalanche don't have the mentality right now because they don't know what they're going to get when teams go out there. So when their team goes out there, they're going to get their best from their opponent because their opponent still knows that they are a very, very talented team. And, they have all-stars on their team up and down that roster. So their opponent is not going to sit back because they don't want to get embarrassed. They want to embarrass you. And so far, the Avalanche have gotten embarrassed 2 out of the last 4 games. So what do they have to do? They need to stop overthinking things, and they just need to let their talent come through. And I was one that was, I guess I want to say okay when the Avs would do an extra pass here or there, but now it's like they're doing an extra pass all the time. The best method, I put it up on Twitter, is the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. If this Avalanche team with this talent can just keep things simple, they don't have to do these highlight reel passes and shots. Mix it up a little bit. Get those scrum goals. It doesn't matter in the end. It's going to go up on the scoreboard as a goal, and there's no asterisk next to it when it looks good. And they know that. Not, preaching to a choir that's not listening. They know that, but they're not doing it. I think they their talent kind of gets the best of them sometimes. And they feel like, well, we're cycling good and we have a 2-on-1 break. Just get a shot on net right now is what you want. They're kind of getting too cute, and that's going to happen from time to time. Might happen during a shift, might happen during a power play. It's happening in games. Across full games. It might be fun to watch. And if it's one of those things where if the payoff is turning into goals, then we shut our mouths and say they know exactly what they're doing and an extra pass. Look at the results. But there's no results. The results are zeros. And just another save by the opposing goaltender. The Avalanche are out shooting their opponent every single night by usually a wide margin. But what do they have to show for it? Every once in a while, you'll get that 6-game or 6-goal game against Arizona. And we thought going into the season, that was going to be the norm for the Avs. They're still a high-scoring team. I didn't look it up. I don't know where they are in the standings, but I'm willing to bet they're obviously in the top 10. But they almost want to get a little too cute, and especially on the power play, which has been struggling. And they're trying different things on the power play. But the last game against San Jose, they did get a power play goal. The Landeskog one, which is that's what you need. He loves being in front of the net. Got a rebound, beautiful backhand. There's a goal. The first goal, which was the Sam Girard one, pretty sure that one came just a couple seconds after the power play was over. So you're coming around. It seemed like in terms of that game, things were getting a little bit better. And but for the first power play, it looked brutal again, and they weren't getting much on net. And it wasn't until the very end where they finally settled down. Just let the game come to you. Don't overthink it. don't overpass, do the simple things. And they're not doing that right now. So I do think, this is still one of the better teams in the league. I think that will show through at some point, sooner rather than later. But the problem is the schedule does not get easy in terms of how many times you have to play. So you don't get time to work on this in practice. You pretty much have to do it on the fly in game. It's almost like you're learning on the job. If there's any changes that you want to make, you don't have time to work on those changes in practice. But that's the situation every team is in. This is not just exclusive to the Colorado Avalanche. So I think they will settle down. I think they have good leadership on this team. And I think those leaders will get these guys kind of into formation and kind of just settle everything down. You just have to get, and I think the way that they lost, because they were up and then they had a horrible third period and they lose 6-2. You're going to lose, and the Avalanche are going to lose more games this season, and they're probably going to lose games that they're up. If they had lost, if they had given up maybe like an equalizing goal in the third with, after San Jose pulled a goalie and then they lost in overtime, that's going to happen too. But to lose 6-2 again in a short amount of time, that makes people like me getting behind a microphone and feel the need to talk about what's wrong with the Avalanche. So we want to start the opposite. We want to start talking about what's right with them. And I think we will. I think this team is smart enough to know that they're not playing well, and they say all the right things in post-game press conferences. And like I said, I think they have the leadership and the qualities that you want in a championship team. Just needs to turn around. Sooner the better, so we can put a lot of people's minds at ease. So let's hope it just starts with one. Start with one. And Jared Bednar said this, when you look at these next 2 months, you don't think, how is this going to end? You take it a day at a time and a game at a time. So you start game 2 against San Jose, win that, and then we'll have another conversation about what to do next. All right, that is going to be it for today. And like each and every day, thank everybody for tuning in. It is greatly appreciated. See if the Avalanche can get a win. It is a big one. They're all big. So we'll see everybody tomorrow, hopefully talking about a Colorado Avalanche victory. Stay safe. See you guys tomorrow.